Okay, cool. Let's see here. I'm going to share my screen and we'll pick up where we left off the other day.
I have this beautiful balance of, I'm looking forward to Thursdays so much now. I started the accounting course yesterday, so like what a spectrum of studies for me right now.
That's really
I
so
hope that
fun.
this is more fun.
Oh yeah. I have to say, now that I'm moving through the course material, um, they did a beautiful job of, well, so far, I mean, it's a very long course, um, but just some great, like I'm picking up some great ideas just for the crew, how effective teeny bite videos are, and but we'll get into that. That's not the topic of today. We're exploring the qualities of the breath.
Here we are. Yes. I could keep talking about sons coming home for the weekend for
I
an
know,
hour
I know.
because it's so sweet. But we'll drop right back into where we left off. So last week we had just finished this first practice, exploring the qualities of the breath. And we left off here kind of talking about how that felt in our bodies, wondering about the adjectives that could describe how we felt in that moment. So this week we continue. Lesson 1 and lesson 2 are both looking at mindfulness of the breath. So there's actually a nice flow between the two lessons. We're going to shift now to looking at another way of anchoring to the breath. So thinking about a soft whisper of a word or a phrase. If you want to get official and use Sanskrit, you can call it a mantra. So examples here on the right would be I, as you inhale, exhale, and here am, inhale, and here, exhale, and here now. I think Mike's here just a second. And so if we have that sort of rhythmic, I am here now, you can imagine how the wave that is your breath just kind of surfs that wave as you follow that mantra. So that's one great option if you want to use this as a tool. Another one that we're going to do today is by just as you inhale, say to yourself here, and as you exhale, now. Here, inhale, now, exhale, which is a great one to put in your pocket and lean on whenever you're in a moment of anxiety. About an hour ago, I got a call from the school nurse, and that's of course the last call you ever want to get, right? Good morning, Mike. Good to see you. And it was this moment, and my kid is fine. He just bumped his jaw on somebody's head playing football. But in that moment, my body reacted, and it felt all the possibilities from that phone call. And even long after I'd hung up. So my mind and my body were still in the phone call, even when I knew things were going to be okay. And so right away, I thought to myself, okay, ground your feet, inhale here, exhale now. Right here, everything is okay. So even in a moment like that, that's a tool you can just lean into. So other options for this would be, you could say to yourself as you inhale, nourish, and as you exhale, release. Another one I love is inhale, let, exhale, go, because we all have something to let go of. Another one that has a little more of a rainbows and unicorns element to it. As you breathe in, you could think to yourself, breathing in, I feel peace. As you exhale, breathing out, I smile. But it's amazing. This sort of practice strikes me as very typical of someone like Thich Nhat Hanh. And there is an actual bodily response to thinking in this way, breathing out, I smile. You just notice what that does in your body, even conceptually. So you're welcome. Sorry, go ahead.
That one feels like Sid.
Yeah. Exactly, right? Which is perfect because Sid is, of course, a student of Thich Nhat Hanh. So that's very much that Thich Nhat Hanh kind of lineage. And you're welcome to create your own word or words or phrase for your practice, and they can be as simple or as complex as you'd like. And the most important thing to remember here is that really only 5% of your focus is on the actual mantra. 95% of your focus is still on the breath. So I think of these mantras or little whispers as a tool to kind of lasso your mind. In yoga, we use the word yoke, like we use the breath to yoke the mind to the body so that our thoughts don't spin out. And this is the same kind of function. We're yoking our breath and our minds to these simple words. And in so doing, our minds can't be chattering or thinking about something else. So we're going to drop right into practice number 2, which is working with the whisper of a mantra. And a great way, I think, too, for us to kind of ease into the second lesson. So start, as always, just by finding any comfortable seat in your body today, whatever that looks like. You can leave your camera on or turn it off, whatever feels good. Maybe if you're seated in a chair, just place your feet softly on the ground so that you can feel your big toes touching the ground and your baby toes touching the ground, and your heels making contact with this supportive earth beneath you. Closing your eyes if you want, or again, leaving them gently, kind of softly half open. Taking a moment or two to soften everything, your jaw, your forehead, any of the tension of the day that might be hanging out there. Relaxing your belly as you come into a nice loose Buddha belly. Imagining a gentle light behind your heart. And maybe placing your hands on your thighs. Really dropping into the breath. And then, as you sit with the gentle rhythm of the breath, begin to match your inhales with the word here, and your exhales with the word now. Following that gentle rise and fall as you inhale here. Exhale now. Continue with this gentle mantra and let yourself slip into whatever your own rhythm might be. Quietly repeating to yourself here on the inhale, and now on the exhale. Yoking your mind to this simple little mantra. Imagining that you're breathing this awareness of how completely present you are. We are here together into every cell of your body, so that the cells of your mind are here now. And the cells in your fingertips are here now. The cells in your belly digesting your breakfast are here now. Taking a few more breaths here in stillness as your mind settles into the rhythm of this simple mantra. And then slowly beginning the gentle process of coming back into all of your senses when you're ready, and only when you're ready. Gently begin to open your eyes and come back into our small little collective. Again, here, just noticing, how did that feel in your body?
It had the same effect that those of us who are mothers might know, like, when you're in a grocery store checkout line and you sway back and forth, that like, still to this day I do it, like when I'm not, it has that really soothing rhythm to it. No, that was like the same like calm that washed over.
Interesting how so many of your metaphors feel like a wave. I mean, like an ocean kind of wave rising and falling. And then you said how that feeling washed over me.
Oh.
I will say that, I came in pretty scattered this morning, just a lot going on. And that sort of brought me back to, okay, what's important at the moment, not where, not the 8 other things that I had going on concurrently in the car way here.
Exactly, which is why it's so useful, right? Because we spin out in moments with all of those 8 or 28 things that need to be done, or things that we want to worry about. And then to really yoke ourselves back to this moment and say, here now. It's like there's great power in it.
Yeah, I would agree. Every day of my life, I say I wake up with anxiety, right? And so immediately I have to start what I would call now a practice, but it was just more of a routine of, before my feet hit the floor, to breathe on my own, and then kind of pray. And then I journal almost immediately to try to write down the things that were good in my life versus the things that were not so good. And then see that no matter what wasn't good, it still outweighed the bad. We just put a magnifying glass on that bad. And so that was the kind of morning that I was having today. And I got here a little late because I had my wife's chauffeur this week. And so I didn't really have that time that I usually have, like the first 15 or 20 minutes, to calm myself. So that served as the purpose of calming myself. And so, yeah, just feel like, all right, we're okay. All right, we could move on from here now.
I'm so glad to hear it. That's exactly what we hope it might do, especially after a morning when you haven't had that space for your, grounding rituals. Paula, you don't have to share if you don't want to, but.
Well, usually my mantra is just counting 1, 2, 3, 4, which feels, very settling. But this was nice because it really brought me into presence, brought me into the moment. So.
Well, you and Sean have both already hinted at what we're doing today, 2 different practices that we'll be doing in a few minutes. So thank you for the perfect segue. Moving on from here, this is a little more from last week, and it just refers to, what it means to create a formal practice. So as you think about what it means to have a formal practice, which doesn't really have to be that formal, consistency or just showing up matters so much more than the quantity of time. That practice we did was about 3 minutes. So you don't have to sit for 2 hours to feel a difference in your body, right? Even 30 seconds of this kind of a grounding practice can really start to rewire your brain in terms of your patterns of response to challenging moments. Try to allot 3 minutes a day between now and our next session for your formal practice. You can choose a time of day, which can be helpful as you build it into your routine. but be flexible about this. And commit to a daily-ish practice. So if you can manage to do a 3-minute sit 5 times in the next week, that's fantastic. Again, I want to come back to what we talked about last week, which is be gentle. Always offer yourself tenderness, especially as you're beginning to establish a formal practice. So consider a location for your practice. Is there a place where you can kind of create a regular practice space? It doesn't have to be fancy. It doesn't have to have a meditation cushion. It doesn't have to have an altar. It can just be your kitchen table if that is going to be what offers you space. You might also want to think about using a timer. So Insight Timer is really user-friendly and it's easy to download, and they have a ton of different modalities, but really the basic one is that it will set a 3-minute timer for you and ring a bell at the beginning and at the end. So if you don't yet have that on your phone, definitely recommend downloading that. Remember what it means to take your seat or to find your comfortable seat. And always that it doesn't have to look like a formal meditation pose. That it might be seated on the edge of your chair or on the floor, or you could even do a meditation like this, you know, in the car if you have 5 minutes before you are supposed to be somewhere. So in the weeks to come, we'll introduce really a variety of styles beyond this seated meditation. But for now, starting here together, let's focus just on the seated meditation. So wrapping up week 1, remember that 3 minutes is great and you're always welcome to go longer if you choose. Anchor into the breath, just as we learned today. But this is really important too. If this anchoring into your breath causes any kind of anxiety or panic, anchor into the weight of your hands on your thighs or the soles of your feet on the ground instead. Especially folks who are coming to meditation, maybe with a background of PTSD or trauma, might find that the breath is triggering, and that's okay. So do whatever you need to do to feel safe. And that's why we always like to offer that you can keep your eyes half open as well. Another way to kind of center and ground your energy is to gently place your hands over your heart. You could put your awareness there instead of the breath. Sometimes I like to put my right hand on my heart and my left hand on my low belly, which has a nice grounding effect. And it almost feels kind of like a hug. So there are lots of options there. So this is the most important part. Remember, you cannot mess this up. So like we talked about last week, the practice starts in the return. So if and when you get distracted or you realize you're thinking about what's for lunch instead of following the mantra, just notice it, smile, come back and begin again. So every time that happens, you know, in yoga, I think of it as falling out of the pose. You just get back in, no big deal. So coming back to curiosity, I encourage you to stay curious. This is a journey we're taking together, so enjoy it. Always remember that there's lightness here. It's not something that we have to take so self-seriously. And there's no pressure to do things a certain way. So when distractions arise, just note them and really tenderly come back to the breath, grounding everything we do in that spirit of beginner's mind. So this is usually the closing practice after the first session, but we're going to use it as a short practice now. And it's just a 2-minute practice. And what I want you to do in this practice is focus on the exhale and see if you can lengthen the exhale as much as possible and find a beat of stillness before the next inhalation starts. So drop into your comfortable seat, whatever that looks like. Feet on the ground or hands can anchor in any of those places that might be useful, your belly, your heart, or hands on your thighs. And gently just start to watch the breath, watching the inhales, watching the exhales, dropping right into the softness in your face, the softness in your shoulders, picturing everything relaxing and melting as it drains all the way out through your fingertips and your toes. And drop into stillness as you really follow those long exhalations. Maybe noticing the coffee machine cycling. And if your mind is drawn away, gently remind yourself life is happening, and come back and continue to follow the inhales and follow the exhales. Slowly beginning to ease your way back. As you're ready, begin to open your eyes. Coming back into the group. So how'd that feel in your body?
I want to start there because I was giggled when you said you just start to come back to your body, because I was like, oh no, this feels so good.
You got what you were supposed to. Good.
Right. The long exhales, like, doesn't that have to do with releasing anxiety? Long exhales and shorter inhale.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
right here, the lengthening
Oh.
the exhale helps to deactivate the stress response. So it is this like tangible tool to hack your nervous system and to tell your body everything's okay. Especially in a moment maybe when your breath is shallow. Any other thoughts or reflections on what you felt?
conscious. I was much more conscious of the shallowness of my breath through the whole series of that. And I know that that's something that I do when I'm stressed, is it's instead of fully cycling that. So it certainly made me more aware, and by the end was better, but sure, still not quite there.
And again, there's no good or bad, right? It's just noticing like, oh, my breath was shallow. Isn't that interesting?
Mhm.
I feel like this is a good tool for kids who's, I think about kids who've maybe just they've fallen and bumped their knee or something, and their breath gets caught up as they cry, or adults cry and have a hard time breathing too. Like if we can help one another to lengthen that exhale, then it's a way to really send that psychosomatic message to the body that everything's okay. All right. So we're at lesson 2, mindfulness of breath. And we're going to just continue along with much of what we've done already to this point. So a quick review, looking at mindfulness and what is an anchor. We define mindfulness as the moment-to-moment awareness of what is here and now without it having to be anything different. Remember your optimal breath. So if everything is going well, the most peachy breath you could picture is natural, effortless, as the body breathes itself. I read a statistics the other day that our bodies breathe themselves 20,000 times a day. And think about how remarkable it is that we don't have to tell our bodies to do that once. They automatically do that instinctively. That optimal breath is easeful and non-striving. So we're not trying to achieve anything or manipulate it. It's calm and unhurried, and it's nurturing and precious. In this breath, you're not pushing or straining. There's nothing complex or tricky, and there's no judgment about how the breath is now. It's an easeful approach to the breath. So the ways of anchoring through the breath, reviewing very quickly what we did last week, by focusing on the sensation of the inhalation and exhalation and that space between the two. Focusing on the quality and the sensation of the breath, and focusing on the location of the body within which that breath is landing. So today we're going to introduce what Paula mentioned, which is shamatha meditation. Shamatha means peaceful abiding or tranquility. It means like calm stillness, finding that moment of tranquility. It's also known as concentration practice and insight mindfulness meditation. The purpose of shamatha is to really stabilize the mind through a steady awareness of one object of our meditation. So that sounds very formal. You'll see very quickly, it's a quite intuitive way to, again, yoke your mind to an object. So in our case today, that object is the breath. And this is a really important practice in the beginning stages of meditation. So shamatha breath practices through counting. Here are 3 examples. Like Paula mentioned earlier, you can just count the breaths. 1, and that counts for both the inhale and the exhale. And then on the next inhale, 2. And keep counting until you realize you're distracted, and then you just start over. Another option would be counting backwards. So maybe start with 30 and count backwards. Or counting 1 on the inhale and 1 on the exhale. 2 on the next inhale, 2 on the next exhale. So you can kind of feel out which one of those works best for you. So some strategies with shamatha. You can imagine a blank canvas, or I like this particular image of an empty movie screen. See the number 1 come up on the inhale and see it fade on the exhale. See the 2 come up on the inhale, see it fade on the exhale, and so on. Or you could pick an image as your object of focus. So for example, that might be a daisy. You can literally imagine yourself plucking each petal and counting each petal as you pluck. And then finally, maybe you want to think of waves in the ocean. So you can count the rise of the wave as your 1 and the fall of the wave as 2. So we just encourage you with this strategy to really be creative and find what works for you. So we're going to take a guided shamatha counting practice. And it's just a 3-minute practice. So once again, get yourself comfortable. Find what feels good in your body right now. Closing your eyes if you want, or letting them rest, just gently, kind of softly half open. And today we're going to take the shamatha practice that involves counting 1 on the inhale and 1 on the exhale. So drop into that familiar, comfortable seat. Soften your jaw. Soften your throat. Soften your shoulders. And then on your next inhale, 1. Exhale, 1. Inhale, 2. Exhale, 2. Maybe you want to envision that movie screen as the numbers flash up on the screen in front of you. Inhaling, 3. Fading away. Exhale, 3. Inhale, 4. Exhale, 4. Inhale, 5. Exhale, 5. Inhale, 6. Exhale, 6. Inhale, 7. Exhale, 7. Inhale, 8. Exhale, 8. Inhale, 9. Exhale, 9. Inhale, 10. Exhale, 10. Inhale, 11. Exhale, 11. Inhale, 12. Exhale, 12. Inhale, 13. Exhale, 13. Inhale, 14. Exhale, 14. Inhale, 15. Exhale, 15. Inhale, 16. Exhale, 16. Inhale, 17. Exhale, 17. Inhale, 18. Exhale, 18. Inhale, 19. Exhale, 19. Inhale, 20. Exhale, 20. Taking a few last breaths here. Just checking in with your body, with your breath, with your mind. Noticing how you feel. And then as you're ready, go ahead and open your eyes. So, how did that feel in your body? Which of those strategies did you really resonate with, or maybe which one was challenging?
I liked the image of the waves a lot. That helped me a lot. I got really distracted when I had a tickle in my throat. So I got really in my head about like, oh, do I just cough or, but then I was able to come back because I didn't want to disrupt anyone. I didn't want to press mute. So, yeah, but the waves helped me a lot. And right toward the end, right before you wrapped up, I was like, oh, wouldn't it be nice if this is how I always felt?
was weird.
I
'cause
wish we
kept-
could package that. Sorry, Sean, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say it was weird because I kept going back, like, so I love summer and the beach and I love the ocean. So in my mind, I wanted to focus on the waves, but I kept seeing the numbers on the screen and it just was like, and then I'm like, oh no, don't do that. I want to be with the waves. And then it's like, nah, you're going for these numbers. I'm like, yeah, but I want to be with the waves. And then so I kind of had to let go of the waves and just go with the numbers.
Oh, I'm sorry you lost your beachy moment there.
Yeah, I lost the beach.
Oh,
But I did notice, like, so what's really weird is, you know, when you first say drop into your seat and then relax, like, you know, the tension in your jaw and in your shoulders. And I'm just thinking, like, that's such like, how tense are you really, you know, all of the time? And then you have to like talk or think or whatever it is, your way out of that space. Because I just noticed like my neck and my shoulders, like if you don't notice, I'm stretching every time because I feel like this, I don't know what it is, but something in my like it's a physical reaction when you say that and when I
Yeah.
focus on that.
And Sean, we've gotten comfortable in our seat 4 times already.
Mhm.
And every time I have to do it.
Right. Like you have to reset it.
Yep.
it's amazing how often we spend our lives with our shoulders up here and we
Yep.
just the whole day and we just don't realize it until that conscious reminder to drop them. And then they creep up again.
Right.
This is life right here. I mean, this is 18 months of COVID right here. So I feel like if you're feeling it there, it's normal. You're literally carrying the weight of your world and your family's worlds and just being alive right now in a challenging season.
I actually found the numbers to be very distracting.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Just I found it easier in the earlier practices this morning to just be quiet where the numbers I started anticipating when you were going to say the next number to try to sync myself.
Wondering which number I was going to stop.
Exactly. I also had
you were going to skip one.
when you got to 10, I was like, oh, she's going to start over for sure. And then you went on to 11. I was like, oh, she went on to 11. Okay. What's going to happen
What's
next?
this 11 business?
I
And
was
I was-
thinking, oh, go ahead, Paula.
Sorry, I was out of step the whole time. I was like holding my breath and trying to keep up and trying to catch.
Which is the tricky part of a guided meditation that involves something like the numbers, because you feel the pressure to sync your breath to the number and maybe your breath doesn't sync to that. And
My
so then
breath
you're
doesn't sync.
manipulating it. Yeah. So maybe it's more useful as an internal meditation if you choose to use that as a tool rather than someone externally dictating the rhythm of your breath.
Yeah, I sort of found that. I figure it probably would be useful just by myself, but I really tried to match your cadence, and that was I focus more on that, I think, than myself.
It's not relaxing, is it, when you're trying to match somebody's cadence, or
Right.
it's stressful a little bit. And I found myself thinking, wouldn't this be interesting if we did it in German? So maybe next week we'll do 12, 13, 14, just to keep you interested, because maybe you don't know what the numbers are and it just sounds like gobbledygook. All right, very good. So think of all these things as a science experiment too. I mean, it's just like a yoga pose. Some of them are going to really resonate in your body and some might drive you crazy, and that will change as your practice ebbs and flows, and that's all really normal. So again, just noticing those responses. They're not good or bad, they just are. So what to do when you're distracted? Just notice and acknowledge and redirect yourself with soft compassion and begin again. If you find you're about to cough and you get caught in inner dialogue about whether you should cough, or when the coffee machine went off, you know, if you find that something pulls you away, just notice and come back. Last week we talked about this analogy of having a puppy in the yard, and that wild energy of a puppy who's sort of discombobulated and thrilled to be running around. Treat your mind just as you would that new puppy who's running away from you, gently guiding it back and bringing it back inside with great tenderness and care.
Can I ask what's like etiquette for group settings? Because if I was home by myself, I would have just coughed.
Right.
But I'm like sharing space with a group, and that could like distract them.
Well, in COVID times, it would definitely distract people because they would be sure that you were giving them COVID. You know?
Is that possible over Zoom?
Is it
Right.
Yeah, get your masks and saran wrap your screen. You know what? I don't think it's a big deal at all. I think any meditation teacher would say, if you have to cough, cough. It's a body's natural response. And if you're forcing yourself not to or trying to hide it, you know, that is manipulation. Just like we don't want to manipulate the breath. But I think about the times I've sat in a room with a lot of people, and somebody coughs or somebody sneezes, and inevitably they feel terrible. And sometimes even afterwards they say, "Oh, I'm so sorry." It's like nobody even noticed.
Right.
It didn't bother anyone. And we're human beings in a room with bodies that make sounds. Like
Right.
I've heard so many stomachs rumbling during Shavasana. That's all normal. And they're part of the being embodied. So no problem, truly.
Okay.
Our body's got to do what they got to do.
Permission to cough.
Yes. So what to do when a focus on the breath is difficult, which might happen to all of us? You could swallow. That could be one way to kind of reset. Think about using what we call the attend and befriend approach. And this is from Tara Brach, who's a wonderful mindfulness teacher based out of Washington, D.C., who's also a psychotherapist and a Buddhist. And she's just got a really lovely approach. And she talks about when we feel something difficult or uncomfortable, to just give it attention. So attend it, notice it. And then rather than fearing it or pushing it away, befriend it. So even in that moment, you know, if you have to cough, attend and befriend. So rather than fearing it or feeling like you have to hide it, just befriend it. Okay, my body needs to cough, and reach out to it and welcome it. So you could also be curious about what is happening. And this is where those 3 words that I just love really come in handy. Isn't that interesting? So like maybe after something frightening has happened, if you can't return to a natural, optimal breath, and you notice your breath is shallow, you've come out of an important meeting and you totally blew it, or you're late and you're worried about getting somewhere on time, just say, isn't that interesting? I'm noticing right now that I'm having a hard time focusing on my breath, or I'm having a hard time breathing. Another way can be to remind yourself, this is happening for me, not to me. So the idea that there is some grace in it, there's maybe some lesson or benefit or gift in this moment of difficulty, that it's an opportunity. That's a great way to kind of reframe it.
That's beautiful. Tough to remember in the moment, I imagine, but that's really beautiful.
Yeah, yeah. And that's where the mind training just comes in. The more and more we practice it, the more we can come back to that approach instead of being hard on ourselves, to be able to say, okay, what's the gift here? What's the lesson here? And meet it with that same tenderness instead of resistance. It's, I think, closely related to what we've talked about in terms of just accepting what is. Like, this is how things are. Okay, what can I take away from that, or what can come out of that? So preciousness. Preciousness. I can imagine that a lot of folks might read that word and be like, oh, preciousness, that's so sappy, it's so cheesy. But preciousness is really just another way of saying that all things pass. So preciousness grows out of the truth of impermanence, the fact that everything will arise, it will change, and it will eventually fade away. Our bodies, a certain job, a certain season of your life, our relationships, they will all arise, change, and fade away. So a focus on this reality, the preciousness of what is, because it will not always be, brings us into the present moment. And a focus on preciousness can help to generate gratitude. So on preciousness, we know that the mind cannot hold thoughts of overwhelm, stress, or negativity and thoughts of gratitude at the same time. So if we can consciously train our minds to focus on what is precious, it can give our minds a much needed break from being really stuck on ruminations or regrets of the past or anxieties about the future. And this is really where what Sean was mentioning earlier about his conscious practice in the morning to take a breath and think about what is good and what he's grateful for. That's completely preciousness practice because it is turning the mind toward what is good. Preciousness can be used as a mindfulness tool to ground you back into present moment awareness. You know, if you have 3 small children and one of them is having a meltdown running around Target with no pants on, in that moment you can suffer because it's totally chaotic and a hot mess, right? Or another approach could be to think, oh, I won't always have a 2-year-old. And that's a good thing in some ways, right? But it's also a sorrow in other ways, because we won't always have our babies as babies. So it can be an opportunity to bring us back to what is and to remember that it won't last forever. So when we practice preciousness regularly, we begin to naturally grow aware of all around us that is precious, that is impermanent. Regular practice on preciousness increases compassion, empathy, and connection, and a sense of our shared common humanity. At the heart of Buddhism is the idea that the reminder that we are all going to die. And that feels harsh to say out loud, but part of the practice of meditation and mindfulness is building a relationship with the reality of death, that our bodies will not always be, that the people we love will not always be. And it's a really a clear-faced understanding of that. And that is really what is underneath this emphasis on preciousness. So we're going to take a mini preciousness practice, and I think we'll do this and then wrap up and go from there next week. And so what I want you to do now is one more time, just drop into that comfortable seat. Checking in with your shoulders, checking in with your jaw. Once again, offering them the invitation to just soften. Feet comfortable. Hands on your thighs, palms down. Or sometimes I like to place my palms in my lap, one on top of the other, palms up. And as you settle into this comfortable position, bring to mind what here and now might be precious. You can even sort of envision the room around you, noticing what here or now might not always be. Don't stress or strain for answers. Just let them arise as they come. And if your mind wants to expand a bit beyond the room where you're seated, call to mind what might be precious in your life. What might be giving you particular joy or connection or beauty. Coupled with the awareness that it may not always be. Maybe that's the green leaves on the tree outside your window. Maybe it's an elder, a loved one who is dear to you. Maybe it's your aging body, the same body that was once an infant, and then a child, and then a teenager, then a 20 something. And now is here, living, breathing, doing the best it can every day of your life. Dropping into this stillness, noticing with tender eyes what in your life is precious. As you're ready, and only when you're ready, starting to come back. And when you're ready, open your eyes. So, how did that feel in your body? What answers came up for you?
That time was so in the first couple of practices, I don't know how to articulate this really. So yeah, I really don't know if this is going to make sense, but I'll try to articulate it. So in the first couple of practices, I felt like almost like headed towards a sleep state, if that makes sense. But in that practice, I was able to notice more. So this is where it sounds weird, like relaxation versus just being like asleep, if that makes sense. Like there was a difference. And within that relaxation, I also felt like I was more aware of what I was concentrating on. So I don't know if I'm articulating that well, but that's kind of how I felt. I felt relaxed versus sleepy, and I was more aware that time.
I wonder if it's related to the fact that in the earlier practices, your mind was yoked to a mantra or a number. And in this practice, your mind was free to wander or to envision.
And I thought about several different things, like, so different things came to mind because, I just started thinking about my surroundings originally. And so one of the things I love to do is read my Bible and write in the morning. And so I have it with me all the time. It's in my sales bag. It's for 20 years. It's never left my side. So I have it with me wherever I go. And so I thought about that. And then for some reason, I could not get my daughter out of my head. And I kept just kind of fluctuating back and forth, but I was in a very peaceful, relaxed state, but aware. But the other times I was just kind of more like not asleep, but very much, and kind of I'm just calling it a sleep state because I don't know how else to say it.
I
It
don't
sounds
think
like
I could describe it any differently either. I think
What's
Sean
that?
sort of, I think you sort of nailed it, Sean. I don't think I could describe it any way different either.
Yeah,
It was a list of things that were current that were, I was very thankful for.
Yeah.
Even if they were unpleasant experiences, it was but
Yeah.
it was much more of a sleep feeling than not.
Yeah.
I wonder if this practice has more of a heart element to it, because it's not just thinking 1, 2, 3, but you're engaging that awareness of what is beloved. And maybe that is also responsible for why it shows up differently for a lot of us.
It made me teary.
Yeah. Yeah, me too.
Yeah, yeah. So I would agree. So as I started thinking about my daughter,
Yeah.
I started to feel the tingly jinglies in my eyes. Yeah.
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 I thought of my dog.
No.
I thought you were going to say your boys, but it's the dog.
Whatever. Hey,
Hey,
Everybody's
good dog.
precious.
no judgment.
Yeah,
no
the
judgment.
boys, whatever. But my dog, she's here. She doesn't leave me.
Well, and Rachel, you started with like I felt like you started with a very like practical, like what's present in your immediate space, and I was like, oh, my plants. I brought my plants into my office, and I'm like oh, they're so, you know. So it was like focusing on that, and then my awareness just kind of like, it was almost like my heart space was just getting like room by room in the office. Like I became aware of like Sean 2 offices down, and I was like, oh, like, and then I became very aware of like how wonderful it was that like he and I were sharing this moment, and we were, you know, like together. And then right before we started this practice, Gretchen came in. So then it like expanded to her room, and I was like, oh, I'm like, it was like sending her love, even though she didn't know. She's probably just in there working. But we're still, I don't know. It was like, this was a really like,
No, I feel you on that, because I thought, and now I will cry,
Bring it on.
because I thought of the space that I'm in versus the space that I was in 2 months ago, physically, you know, physically in this environment, in pain and sore and stressed beyond belief, and then just appreciative to be in this physical space where, you know, I feel just more hopeful and engaged in the present, and hopeful about the future. And then considering, like I used to always say there, whenever like our senior leadership and people would go crazy over, you know, TPH being off by 0.2% or whatever, I would look at them sometimes and say, you realize it's dog food, right? Like it's dog food. Like that's what we're doing here. Dog food out of the building. Like we could all relax. It's like, it's not that serious.
Yeah. Yeah.
And to be here building something that is incredibly more relevant than dog food getting out of a building. Now that's important work. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying it's not important work, but just in my mind, I started to feel those things as well, just for the physical space and then the physical activity and the things that I get to do here versus what I was doing just 2 months ago, and not realizing how much I absolutely was miserable in it until I wasn't in it. Because, you know, the body and the mind just learns how to adapt. And so, you know, we figure it out and we go and we keep pressing on. So to be out of it really showed me how miserable I was to be in it. And so just very grateful for where I am now. And now I need,
wonderful.
yeah.
That's wonderful.
I was thinking about our conversation too, Mike, back in August. I remember when we talked that day, my family was home, so I went outside. I was just walking around. I could just remember all of these things that led to this point. So, yeah, anyway.
I feel like you just articulated everything that we talked about on the slide before we did the meditation. The way that mindfulness or preciousness practice brings us into the present moment, and it deepens our gratitude, and it stretches our sense of connection. I mean, you're living proof right there. And that was like a 4-minute practice. So it's remarkable, right? The way it can ground us in where we are and help us to see it with new eyes and appreciate some of the things that we otherwise might blow right by because we're in the hustle of the grind.
I'm so grateful for this time with you.
Yeah, it's
everybody.
wonderful.
I'm
It's good
loving it
stuff.
too. Thank
Yeah.
you. It's really good to just be with you all. So thank you again for your time. And I hope that starting your day this way puts everything else into cruise control.
I don't know. Mike and I have to work on financials today. We'll see.
well,
That'll be the
This is
test.
exactly the best thing to do before going through financials, I promise you.
Perfect. Just remember, we're all going to die, so financials really don't matter.
Yeah, it's dog food, guys. It's dog food. It's
It's
not
dog
that
food.
serious.
I think
Dog
we
food.
need to add that, Sarah, to the quotation
Quotations.
Slack channel.
Right.
It's all dog food.
food.
All dog food, that's adorable.
It's not that serious. Everything's gonna be okay.
Gonna be all right.
That's right. That's right. All right. Well, on that note, I got to let you go and jump into your day. But thank you so much for being here. And I wish you a beautiful one. And I look forward to next Thursday.
Thank
Thank
you.
Awesome,
you.
guys.
Thanks,
Enjoy.
everybody.
Take care, everyone.